And we're live. At least that's what the technology says. Welcome to another edition of the Friday FARcast. Our scheduled guest is Matt Presti from mattpresti.com. He's a very interesting fellow, and he's got a lot of Renaissance man vibes. And Matt, if you're out there, I hope you can make it, because we'd really like to spend some time with you. So the invitation is out there. He's got the email address or the link from Streamyard. And if you live somewhere near his place in Missouri, why don't you go knock on his door and let him know the show started. Anyway, we're here. I'm here. And it's always a pleasure to be here with you on this day, Friday. And so I have to have a contingency plan if Matt doesn't show up. And I kind of do. A little bit. We'll see. Because a lot of this is just going to be on the fly. But anyway, how is everybody? It is one day before the theoretical doomsday, the 23rd. So I guess we'll all find out tomorrow if something is going to crash from the heavens or crash from the markets or crash in our own personal lives, perhaps. Usually these doomsday events are not necessarily personal. They're global in their catastrophic intensity and reach. So we'll find out tomorrow. In the meantime, we are here today, and thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for all of your well wishes. Another year in the realm. And it gets interesting from this point. Every year from this point gets interesting. I'd like to think that I've taken pretty good care of my body over the years, although there have been times where I have probably done more things to it than it wanted me to do. And I'm still relatively healthy and relatively mobile in a lot of ways, right? I do have some issues with my back, which is, if there was one thing that I could turn back the clock on, it would be a certain night in 1980 where I shattered my elbow. And I actually thought I had broken part of my back, which I did not do, which was a surprise to me because it hurt like hell. It was the elbow that was shattered. If I could redo a couple nights, that'd be one night that I would redo. But I'd say overall, I'm pretty blessed in terms of, knock on fake wood, the health department piece, or being healthy for the most part. It just, as we evolve and go through this process we call aging, it definitely hits in ways. You know, this is my 63rd year here. You know, I know it's a cliche where we say it goes by fast, and it really does go by fast. And then you get to a certain point, like in the early 60s, where the event horizon gets closer and closer, and you start looking at the world through your relationship, or one's relationship, with the event horizon. And I was working with a client a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about her husband, who I believe is maybe 1 or 2 years older than me. It might be 1. And she was about a decade younger than him. And she started to talk about, like, what's going on with him, and sort of his spiritual and emotional state, and some of the behaviors that he's kind of indulging in, and they weren't terrible, okay, but clearly there's something going on. And aging is different for men than it is for women. For women, aging is reflected in their physiognomy, meaning their beauty, right, and their youth. And I know I'm generalizing a little bit here, but I've spent a fair amount of time thinking about this and actually living it. So for women, it's about, well, do I still look good? And it is, can I still function? Right? Because men, by and large, and I'm not saying who don't have to, be really, really functional. We've got Leigh here in chat, and she'll tell you a lot about how important that is for her and her life and her work. But, men go out and, do their 12, 13 hours of labor, theoretically, right? This is sort of part of the agreement, right? Like, and it's inside of us, and we have this genetic connection to being functional. And even if we're not doing that, a lot of us, being men, have played sports and have done very physical things in the world. So when that begins to taper off, or you can't do the same things that you used to do, or even to do those things even at a lesser extent, it hits men. This is the thing with aging that hits men. And then it's like, okay, so if I have to rectify this and make this better, then I have to put in a ton of work in order to function at a level that's not even where I used to be, but allows me to do things that are maybe somewhat approximate, right? That's and honestly, what you're doing it for now at this point is for what happens 10, 15 years down the line, so that me, you, whoever is watching this is going to be more functional during that phase, because that phase is really a killer in a lot of ways. You become more dependent upon people. It's just the way it is. So it's interesting getting to this point and understanding, what my limitations are, and can I work within my limitations, or can I break my limitations down? It's a bummer that Matt's not here, because I'd love to ask him some of these questions. He's a big Walter Russell guy, and we had Craig on here. I think it was last year. We were talking to Walter Russell and got into that with him. We got a pretty good breakdown, but Matt was the president of the Walter Russell Foundation. So, I mean, this is a guy that's immersed himself in his work. I guess I can go to his website, show you his website. Maybe I'll do that at some point. But no, it's interesting, and getting to this place, and then looking at the work that it's going to take to put, to really put in the time and the effort to remain functional, and even in some ways improve like the level of physical ability I still have. And I'm not signing out on that right this moment, right? But I think probably the best strategy is to slow the process down as much as possible, so that we can remain as independent as possible. And at some point, we all have to depend on somebody. It's just the way it is. I've got my mother in the other room, and I have become that person in her life. And I have to say, it's very interesting watching this kind of unfold in real time with her. So there's a couple things I've noticed. Is number one, I'm probably not as patient in my head that I thought I was. So I have to work on patience. That's the one thing I've noticed. Number two, I've noticed that, okay, I never figured this out before, but my mother has Saturn and Mercury conjunct in Aries, and she has Eris conjunct her Mercury. And I got to tell you, I'm getting a front row seat of discordia. I'm just saying. Like, Eris is now becoming my teacher. I'm learning about, and I don't know, this is all new territory for me. Some of you people that might have some strong Eris placements, maybe you can chime into the chat and tell me how you deal with it. Or if you're with somebody that has really strong Eris placements, tell me how to deal with it. This is going to be a good astrological, real life situation for me. I'll give you an example. I had two major Eris moments with her yesterday. So she gets, like, she's older. And of course, if she's running out of her medicine or getting low, she gets a little freaked out, right? Because this is what old people do. As some people, it's like, oh, no, I need it. I got to stay alive, So I start to get the message that I've got to go drive into town, which is 14 miles away. And my schedule is just station to station. It's just station to station. It's like I get up, I start working, and I don't stop working really until I go to bed. And I'm okay with it, right? But it's just really packed. And I had like an hour yesterday in between clients to get my car, drive 14 miles one way, 14 miles the other way, a mile or two in between. So we're talking 30 miles, right? So I go to the drive-through at the HEB pharmacy to pick up her prescription. And I say her name and I say her date of birth. And it's not there. It's not there. I'm like, oh, Jesus, here we go. Right? Here we go. So what am I going to do? I get back in the car. I drive home. And I tell her, I said, look, it wasn't there. You need to call these people. Somebody had created a whole new profile for her. Like, she had already had a profile. Somebody created a whole new profile, changed the first letter on her name, and then messed around with her birth date, like some kind of weird inversion. And I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, that has never happened to me. Well, something similar happened to me, but it's not anywhere like anything like that. And now it's all reset again. So she's got the right but it's like that is like the discordia that I've been living with. Like, how do you prepare for that? Like, I guess you got to be like so freaking anal. Like, you got to call. Can we check? I mean, this is the only thing that I am taking away from this right now, is to become more of a control freak. And I'm not even sure that's the answer. I mean, because with Uranus, and they're very different energies. Because Uranus is kind of creative. I don't know if Eris is all that creative. I'm still looking for the creative touch point with Eris. I haven't been able to track it down yet, but give me some time. All right, that's one incident. Here's this other incident. So we had to go on a drive yesterday and do another errand, right? It's like a lot of errands. I'm driving Miss Daisy. That's what I'm doing. And so I go to the gas station, the HEB in Kerrville, and I unscrew my cap from the gas, and it like pops off, and I'm and it's actually attached to the little door, the flap, right? Well, it got unattached. It was almost like some invisible hand just plucked it right out of there. So what does it do? It literally like drops and goes behind my rear tire. I'm like, okay. I'm just going to fill the car up, and it's probably down there somewhere. So all I got to do is just roll this car forward, maybe about 5 feet, and I'll see it. What happens? I fill it up. I roll the car forward 5 feet. I can't even fucking find it. Like, where did the fucking gas cap go? Is there like an alternate universe for gas caps? So here's what I think happened. It's somewhere like nestled between the wheel well and the chassis. I don't know. And it wasn't just the weird kind of like loss of the gas cap. It's like how it almost catapulted right out of the tank, really. And at this point, I'm like, I am throwing the fucking towel in for a day. And then, okay, there's another one. This is the Discordia sandwich. So that event happened at the beginning of the day with the drive down to the HEB to pick up the prescription, where her entire profile had been changed. And then the other one happened at the end. And in between, we go to dinner. We go to this Mexican restaurant. And I, if you don't know this about me, I am not a huge tomato fan. I can take tomatoes in ketchup, V8 juice. There's something about the chunk and the texture that I just don't like. And so when we have Mexican food, usually it's this kind of Tex-Mex gravy on the enchiladas, which is delicious. And there's no big ass chunky tomatoes like in the actual enchilada gravy. Love it. Great. Fine. Cheese enchiladas, great comfort food. So, I think it's like what? Ranchera sauce. They order these enchiladas. I think that's what I'm getting. And they come back and it's, they're in an ocean of fucking tomatoes. I'm just like, it's always awkward, right? Because if there's something that comes back wrong and or like you just can't eat it, it's like, for me, I don't want the help to feel bad. And some places will push back on you. I'm like, look, and I was being really just, look, I can't eat that. I'll pay for it. I don't care. You can keep it. Like I didn't even want anything else at that point. It's like, I can't eat it. I'll just pay for it. Don't worry about it. And the guy looked dumbfounded. And then we had the classification of the enchilada discussion. And he told me about the difference. And I'm like, okay. All right. Padrita, we're going to miss you. By the way, I got your room taken care of. You're all good if you haven't heard about it. We got a lot of tomato lovers. Oh, I've had some Mars and Libra shit. Trust me. I've had some Mars and Libra shit. That's a whole different story, though. But he was cool, right? Then he brought me the other enchiladas, which is more like the Tex-Mex gravy style. Look, I've been eating Mexican food all my life. In California, usually it's the same for the most part. Here, I guess now I've got to be really like sauce specific. I have to ask questions. It happened to me a couple of weeks ago. Here's a pet peeve. And it's a Virgo pet peeve. And it's a fucking first world problem. But it's my first world problem. My pet peeve is when you read a menu and they list the ingredients and then they leave ingredients out. That is a pet fucking peeve. Because at that point, I'm like, okay, well, it didn't say tomatoes in here. And this happened a couple of weeks ago. I was having some fajitas. In my experience with fajitas is that you get red bell pepper and some green bell pepper and some onion, and that's what I experienced with fajitas. And guess what? That's what it said on the menu. So I'm thinking, oh, this is good. This is what I'm expecting. And then I order it's like they're doing you a fucking favor. That's your bonus ingredient. We were surprising you. That's your bonus ingredient. Oh man. Anyway, it's interesting living with Eris. I might be able to write a book on it. And you know what's really interesting? This is really interesting. Is like I've noticed that my mother has always made things hard. Things always hard. And like almost everything is hard. And maybe it's the Saturn Mercury conjunction, but I definitely think Eris is involved here. Right. And so I would see how difficult she would make things from a distance. And now I'm living up close. And I'm like, whoa, living with that every day, that's gotta be a handful, like some serious astrological lessons. But things are actually going pretty well. Maybe she's offloading her discord onto me because she seems to be doing better. Right? Like the quality of her life has improved since she's been here. She's not paying a mortgage, no state tax. California is going nuts with like the mask. She used to live in Contra Costa County. Now they got a mask mandate in Contra Costa County. She ditched that. She was always at the beck and call of all of her friends, doing all these little things, running around here, running around there, trying to be a good friend, doing all this shit for her church. She's not doing any of that anymore. And I think she's kind of finding herself at a new level. And that's great. It's great. It's totally great. So you know what I could do today? Since it doesn't look like Matt's going to be here. I think if he was going to be here, he'd be here by now. I did an interview with Leigh Guest. Let me see if I can find this thing. I might just play her interview today. Let me get into a Streamyard. I have not edited this at all. This is just kind of raw, me and her. So let me see if I can get into the recordings. Where are the recordings? Let's see. Library. I think it's in library. Just give me 1 second. Let me see if I can track this down. What do we got here? Okay. Let me see if I can track this down. I've never tried to do a search for a live recording that I've done. This is all new territory. Destinations. We've got destinations. Home. Let me go into my account. Team settings. Home. Past. How do I get? Let me see here. Hold on. Don't go away. Do not go away. Do not go away. Here we go. Here we go. I want to download this sucker. There we go. Let's do that. Let's do that. We get into this. There we go. Thanks for being patient here. Your patience shall be recorded. Shall be not just recorded, shall be rewarded. Let me see what we got here. All right, it's going to take a little while to download, but that's okay. I guess I can talk and share for the majority of the time that it's being downloaded. So let me go back here. Working a lot of mommy issues the last 10 years as I moved in with her. Not fun, but important. Our relationship with our parents is so interesting, isn't it? It's just, it's mind-boggling how this whole thing works. And I gotta say, I'm actually glad that she's here, because this is a person that I know, but I don't really know in a lot of ways. And the reason that I don't know is because she doesn't know. She doesn't know who she is. You know, she loving, devoted wife, hardworking mother, hard worker in the workforce. Father passes away and then sort of moves into, becoming the church lady and servicing all of her octogenarian friends. And some of those things are about her, but not really about her, right? And this is the first time she's lived outside of California since she moved to California in 1964. So it was a long California run. She's never lived anywhere else. So the reason I didn't really, it's like I live with this woman every fucking day, but I didn't really know her. I knew sort of the functional processes that she was capable of, and maybe some behaviors that I wasn't really all that crazy about that she was capable of. But her as a person, I knew my father way better because, for all of his warts and everything, we talked and we're extremely honest with each other. So now my mother's kind of unfolding and she's letting go of a lot of her obligations. So she's kind of, in an interesting way, she's kind of discovering herself. So now I'm getting to know this person who's getting to know themselves. It's a kind of a fascinating process to watch. And I'm glad I'm a part of it because, when she passes, and we're all going to have that moment someday, even though we might be spiritually immortal, I want that moment to be important to me. We should all want that moment to be important. Not like, oh, well, nice knowing you, right? I mean, there's some people that have that. But I don't think it should be that way. Just my 2 cents. So I'm happy that she's here and watching her grow. That's the other thing too, right? What is she, 85? And she's actually growing. And, I take her to physical therapy and she's, being pushed in physical therapy. So it's been not an easy transition, but it's been a good transition. And hopefully I'm just trying to figure out how to live with Eris. Maybe I need to have some kind of an Eris shrine or something like that. Some kind of like fetish to Eris. Let's see. What do we got here? Anybody in chat? Bless her. Yeah, thanks. My wife had to become the caretaker of the mother that gave her away. Whoa. I tell you, as an astrologer, I hear so many stories from people. Like crazy fucking stories. Stories some of you probably have on your own terms. And one of the things that I have determined throughout all of this, and some people, every now and then you'll run across a person that's got a blessed life. And you can tell that they have a blessed life. And you can even see it in their chart, believe it or not. It's like, wow, Why are we talking? No. Even then, people, want to find out about certain dates or events. Why did this happen? Or, you know, but my experience through working with clients is life is really fucking hard. It is hard. This is not an easy trip. And I guess it could be an easier trip. Joe Dispenza seems to have figured it out, right? It could be an easier trip, but I don't think it's an easy trip at all. I think this is a very, very arduous and challenging place to be. And when you hear the stories that I've heard from a lot of people, you understand that it's more common than not that this is a very challenging place with a lot of pain. A lot of pain. Stories of parents losing their kids and just all kinds of, if I focused on some of them, which I won't, you would see that there's broad spectrum tragedy here in this world. And look, I've said this before. I think if you're here and you're doing reasonably well in your life, you should be commended, because this is not an easy place. And when I say reasonably well, I'm talking about being able to provide for yourself, to be reasonably healthy, to have reasonable relationships in your life where you don't have to be laden with, idolaters. But if you have some really good friendships and relationships, those are really important, right? You have some of those things in place in your life and you are way ahead of the game. Of course, there are some people who master the game of life at higher levels. Property, not materialism, but property, material, resources, right? That's a big, big level of mastery in this world. And some people go about it in a fairly above board level. I know some of those people. They don't do bad business. They do good business. They're hardworking. They use lots of different models and prognostications, and they put their sweat equity into things that they want to invest their money in. And more often than not, their investments pay off. So there are people that aren't just handed a fucking, silver spoon. And there aren't people who have learned how to game the system at any cost. And there are plenty of them out there. So there are some people who understand this thing about resources and money and the material world and input and output. And that's an important thing here. If you want to create a life where you have certain things around you that have value and meaning, and you can do things for other people that have value and meaning, that's not a bad thing. And a lot of us have been conditioned that it is a bad thing. It was part of my conditioning, not directly, but indirectly. I mean, I grew up in the 60s. And in the 60s, there was this massive, turning away from materialism. And I talked about this, I think, last week on the show. And it was on the Sunday night show. And there was this whole, fuck the man. There was a fuck the man attitude. And I kind of grew up in that. We don't need all these material things to be happy. What we need is freedom. It's freedom and truth, baby. That's all we need. And so that was my pop cultural communion. And then you throw in the fact that my parents didn't have a lot of money. So it wasn't as if I could indulge in wanton excess at their expense. Doesn't mean I didn't like things. I was really into Hot Wheels and shit like that, right? I did like certain toys. Like, what kid doesn't? But this place is difficult. And if you have your health and you have the ability to do something where you can make money, stay in the game, not have to prostitute yourself to do it, and you have a comfortable place that you can sleep in and do other things, raise a family, whatever, and you have some friends, you're ahead of the game. You are ahead of the game. And I mean, sure, would it be great to have a second or third home and, maybe have a boat that you can cruise around the Caribbean on? Yeah, fuck, I wouldn't mind living that life for a year or two. That'd be fun. I don't think I'd want to have it forever. I'd probably get bored with it. But I also think that during this time where everything is inverting and we're in this cycle with Uranus and Taurus, where Uranus and Scorpio was all about innovation, right? It was all about the acceleration of technology. And we've done this before. We've looked at that period. Uranus and Taurus tears it down, and we're into like the D. We talked about this again, like de-adulting. It's sort of de-industrializing. Whatever you have as a comfort in your life, now it's about fill in the blank. This is Uranus and Taurus, so it's harder if you want to kind of elevate and use that trampoline to get to the next levels of prosperity. It's not impossible, but it's certainly harder than it was, say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I don't think it's going to be easier. We're going to be dealing with this Uranus-Jupiter conjunction, both retrograde. That's going to be tricky. And I think that gets into the whole banking and money scam, right? So we have some real hurdles to get over here in the next few years. I've been on the record and said that between 2025 and 2029, we'll just go 2026 to 2029, that 3 years, that 3-year period is going to be the hardest 3 years that we may have ever seen in clearly modern history. Trust me on this. I'm not a doomsday guy per se, but when you see the astrological aspects that are coming, and the eclipse, especially the one in April, that's the biggie, and Saturn and Neptune conjuncting in Aries, man, right? And you have 3 years of Saturn in Aries, one of the hardest positions. It's in its detriment in Aries, right? It's exalted in Libra. It's in its detriment. So this is when we think of Aries, we think of the will, and we think of sort of this dynamism in the individual, in vitality, in action. And what does Saturn do? It puts a clamp on it. That's what Saturn does. It's like, oh, you think your individuality is important? We've got another recipe for your individuality. And then you throw Neptune into that, which can be very seductive in a lot of ways. When I kind of future project into it, I kind of get a Starship Troopers vibe. Do you guys ever see that movie, Starship Troopers? It was the cinematic version of the Robert Heinlein book, Paul Vanderhoven. It's actually a really great movie. I should do a review on it one of these days. But there's this slightly fascistic sort of undertone with the movie, right? And one of the things that is omnipresent in that movie is propaganda. And propaganda to go fight this war across the galaxy on this planet Clendathu, which the Earthlings have somehow gotten to a major confrontation with. And Clendathu has these massive bugs, right? So it's all about propaganda, and propaganda around war. and propaganda around the state, right? And I just look at the Saturn Neptune conjunction, and that's the vibe I get. I get a Starship Troopers vibe, and side of it, there is something interesting that's a part of this. Is that as Neptune is the great solvent of the zodiac, and that's what it does, it dissolves. So it could theoretically act as a solvent for the very low ceiling of Saturn and Aries. Like that is ceiling aspect in the chart. Act, don't act, act, don't act, act, don't act. Now, not yet. Now, not yet. Now, no, not yet. So Neptune might be able to dissolve some of that. So it'll be interesting to see that as we have this one version of state-sponsored propaganda, which feels in a lot of ways very fascistic. On the other hand, this may be a very interesting and potentially great time for individuals who have been in bondage and been in chains with Neptune on top of Saturn to dissolve some of that. So both things can be equally true. And when we have these events and these systems that act on one another, they have an effect, they have an impact. So let's say there's a big appetite for some kind of synthetic war. Well, how's that going to affect people? Are they just going to go run off and die for God and country? And whoever sits in the White House or whatever place it is at that point in time, right? Or will it act as this kind of neutralizer where people wake up and they say, well, I'm not going to go do that. You know, go send your drones over there. Isn't that what you spent all that money for? Go send your robots over there, right? So there's something interesting during that time, but it is not necessarily written in stone or an easy path. In fact, we started this discussion off by talking about how difficult life is and can be. Those 3 years, I think, epitomize the human story. Because when you deal with Aries, you're dealing with the individual. And when you're dealing with Saturn, you're dealing with restraint. You're dealing with, 4 walls and a cot, right? In a lot of ways. I mean, that's hard. Saturn and Aries is basic fucking training. You don't exist anymore, right? You are now an ant in the system. That's Saturn and Aries. You'll be broken down. You'll be assimilated. So there's that floating around. But then here comes Neptune coming into play, and it's like, okay, we're not playing that game anymore. So these two things can be equal at the same time. And so through the difficulty and through the contraction, and that is a very, very deep contracting moment. I hadn't thought about this before. I had not thought about this before. But when you come into the chart, this is the part I've thought about this. When you come into the chart, you take your first breath, and that's your rising sign. It's always the first house, and that's Aries. And we're dealing with Saturn in Aries, right? And then Neptune on top of it. And it feels to me like labor. Like those 3 years are labor pains. Because if it's true that we incarnate and we take our first breath and we get the degree of the rising sign, and it is true in astrology, whether you believe in it or not, that's what happens, right? It's all Aries. And Saturn is hard. Saturn is a hard labor. It's exactly what it is. And you throw Neptune on top, which is the promise, potentially, of spiritual liberation. from this other kind of deep propagandistic world, or the deep propagandistic worldview that is going to be spewed and drummed up. So that's an interest. I never had thought about that aspect from this idea of birth and labor. And when you think about it, it's kind of exciting. And I'll tell you why. It's because of where Saturn goes. Saturn winds up in Taurus. And if you've taken my course, where you've listened to my talks on astrology, the 8th house and the 2nd house are conception and birth, right? The 8th house and the 2nd house. The 8th house is Scorpio. You got to go to the 8th house to conceive, right? You meet another person in the 7th house. Hi, I like you. Hey, let's go to the 8th house. Okay, let's go to the 8th house. And so you conceive. Where does it come out? It comes out in materiality. The 8th house is all those wonderful sexually charged pheromones and hormones and bodily fluids that can join, right, in sort of in the ethers and in the biological space. And so it has to come out on the other side, which is the Taurus side, physical form. Now, Taurus isn't the first sign, it's Aries. But the thing about Aries is that when you're born into Aries, or born and you have your ascendant, you're not really, I mean, some people might be, right? But you're really dependent upon other people. You got to feed you and wipe your bum and all that stuff, right? It's not until you enter into the Tauran phase of the evolution of the individual, which happens at around age 2. And at that point in time, you become aware of your body and your bodily functions. And that's around the time that most people become toilet trained. And it's probably the most important thing that happens to everybody, because once that happens, you are now no longer just an appendage of somebody who feeds you and tickles you and cleans your bum. Right now, you have to be responsible for your own bodily functions. To me, that's really when the landing begins. You're already a physical biological entity, but you're just pure will unmanifest. That's all you are. So nobody really lands completely until about 2. And in some cases, even 3. And 3 would be suitable because it's 3 is part of a Saturn cycle, right? So we're going through the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, hard labor, with the possibility that something new can emerge from it. And where does Saturn go in 2030? Taurus. And between the time that, the end of 2024 and 2030, there is no land in the sky. There's no Earth in the sky. It's only until 2030 that Earth shows up. That's Saturn in Taurus. And that's, guess what else? Agenda 2030. It's exactly what it is. And we've talked about this before on this show. There's a reason why they picked 2030, because that's when they want to give birth to their version of their new world through the reset. They're hip to this. They understand this. So we're in a spiritual battle for their version of the reset, or the new birth, or the rebirth, and then potentially what's ours. And I'm not even sure we know what that looks like from this vantage point. All I know is that we're going to be, for those 3 years, we're going to be in that labor. And it won't be easy. That said, with Neptune kind of on top of it all, there is the potential for the miraculous. There is the potential for the divine. There is the potential for God to enter into man's and woman's affairs, right? If you go back and look at the star seed Chronicles, right? You guys, was it, isn't that what it was? Starseed Chronicles? The book that heavily influenced me for a while. It was a pretty cool book. I think there was a precursor to it called A Vision or something like that. Anyway, one of the things that came through that book, which was channeled, was that there was this description of something I'm talking about, where the divine or God, which is always there, but we become conscious of it all at the same time, right? That's what happens, or that's what's prophesied in the starseed transmissions. Is that what it was? That's what's called starseed transmissions. It's been a long time since I've read it, but that's kind of what we're talking about, right? That we become conscious and aware of everything being God, right? Including us. And then through that, we're like, whoa, this is awesome. We're pretty small, but we're pretty big too, right? Like, that's what we're talking about. And I feel like this is that 3-year period that we're going to be going through. And I never really had this thought until today when we started to talk about it. Because there is a fucking doomy script there. Don't get me wrong. You know, we've got this eclipse happening in April, which is an initiator for that 3-year period. And it's coming right up from Mexico. And, you know, it's a different eclipse path than the one coming in October, which comes down from Oregon and goes right through where we're going to be on the weekend of the 14th. It comes up from Mexico, which is different, and then cuts east, right? And when I started to look at that eclipse, I'm thinking, man, this is heavy duty border. This is the stuff that just looks and feels like a fucking invasion and a war. It's what it feels like. When I go into it from a neutral space, that's what it feels like. And it runs right along like the New Madrid fault line in the Mississippi River, which I think will play a role in all of this before it's said and done. But I feel like that's kind of where we are. You know, we're headed towards 3 years of labor and then birth and the new body, right? In Taurus, the new body of humanity. And we're in this pitched battle. And we're not even close to the front lines yet. We're in this pitched battle with a consciousness that wants to abort that. It wants to abort that process. And it would be interesting if we could make a case that we've been here before, and that through these resets, they've either stopped the process or they had already achieved some kind of knowledge a priori, right? Like they had something. It was like, sorry, you don't get to play in that sandbox anymore. Okay. So it's one of the two. They either stopped it as it was developing, or they melted the sandbox. So I think we've been here before, but I think this is different. I think this is very, very different because of the amount of awareness and the, I hate to use the word global mind, but I'll use the word collective mind that we're engaged in every single day, whether we know about it, right? Like right now, I'm streaming through this camera and there are 183 of you watching. And there are other shows doing this at the same time, whether it's here on YouTube or Rumble or some other platform. It's all happening. And there are people on Twitter that are tweeting away and share. Like this is, we are literally mapping this collective mind, and we don't even know it. This is what's going on. So that's why I think this go round is different. It is the connecting points and the nodes that have joined us all together so that we're a part of this process and all contributing to some extent. Now, what we're contributing, that's a whole other topic of conversation. But these are interesting times, and we kick off the eclipse season here in the Hill Country on the 14th, and a lot of you are going to be there. And I'm bummed that Pedrita's not going to be there. She was the complete and utter karaoke champ. We had some good karaoke people, but she freaking slayed us with this Brazilian song. Man, a standing ovation. That's how good she was. So I guess it's better for the rest of us because we don't have to compete with that again. But we'll miss her anyway. I'm still waiting for this download to happen. How far away are we from it? I have to talk for another 20 minutes. I should have downloaded this before. But I didn't know we were going to have to go down this path. We're about 3/4 of the way through on the download side of things. 16 minutes left. Oh, good. All right. Let's talk about Sunday night. I think I'm going to have Mr. Narco Longo on the show. And he's got some things he wants to talk about. I've got some things I want to talk about. It's all going to be astrologically related. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is Russell Brand's chart. And I did 3 shows this week on Russell Brand and kind of a mosaic of Brand's issues, background, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember the first time I looked at Russell Brand's chart, I was taken aback, actually. I was really taken aback because as an astrologer, you get to like understand certain things. You don't have the fucking, keys to the universe. Astrology doesn't really work that way. But you do have some understanding of certain things. You have some understanding of people's potential in their chart. And it's kind of like, when a realtor or let's say it's somebody who wants to flip a house, and they may see something in a house that nobody else sees. It's like, wow, this house has really good bones or whatever. And and they're trained in this, right? It's like they have an eye for it. So when I first saw Russell Brand's chart, my thought was, this guy's got a motherfucking impressive chart. Like, if I didn't know it was Russell Brand and I was just looking at this chart, I would say this guy is going to have a really big impact on the world. And what happens is that we get caught up in a lot of cult of personality stuff, and for better or worse. And he's not a perfect person, trust me, he's not. And I still think he leans way too heavy into the sort of the communitarian socialism side. But he has a very unique and in some ways destined chart. So I'm going to crack his chart open on Sunday night, and I'm going to do my best to look at it from an unbiased perspective. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the guy, but I can recognize certain things in a person's chart regardless of whether I am. And it's always what you do with it too. That's the other side of it. I mean, he has, certain things about his chart are pretty big. But, if he would have stayed on a path that he was on 2007, 2013, whacked out of his mind on drugs. Some people said he's had some relapses. Could be, who knows, who cares? Right, but that was like the bulk of his heavy duty sex, drugs, and rock and roll phase. But it feels like, he's kind of turned this corner. He's got a wife, a devoted wife. She's everywhere with him, has kids. And we all know that that changes you. And for most people, it changes them for the better. So he's not that guy anymore. At least he doesn't have the same level of those addictions. Because if he did, there'd be a lot more dirt on him, you know, from people that are post like 2013. And I'm not here to again defend Russell Brand. He's a big boy. He can defend himself. He's quite good at it, by the way. And there are other people who are much bigger voices than I do, Elon Musk being one of them, who clearly is in his camp. I don't really need to defend him. No, but that's not my take. But my take is that guy's got a motherfucking impressive chart. And he could be a force for good in the world. I'm being straight up. This is from a guy who I did a video on him, and you know, he basically had my video pulled. It's on from YouTube probably about 4 or 5 years ago. You know, I guess I could hold a grudge, but it wouldn't serve me any. So we're gonna look at that. At least I will on Sunday night. Maybe we'll bring Narco in and have him comment on his chart. That'll be interesting. Let's see what else. Oh, and I'm going to look at the Sibley chart on Sunday night for the chart of the U.S. This is the one that I use. And I follow S.J. Anderson over on Twitter, who is a great astrologer and a really good follow. He's a little bit different than I am. He's very astrological, right? Like there are certain astrologers who are really astrological, and they really get into like the minutia and the motions and they're like, I do that, but that's not really where I start. Like a lot of these guys start from that position. And if you like that kind of astrology, that's really thorough and, you know, kind of very Virgoan in some ways, he's a really good follow. He's not dry either. Like he talks about some things that are worthwhile in terms of collective astrology or mundane astrology, global astrology. So he's a good follow. And he's a user of the Sibley chart. And if you just want to line up the Sibley chart with 9/11, it's a, pardon the expression, over the target, right? All right, how much time do we have left here? It says 20, can't be 23 minutes. It'll be soon. All right, let me see some comments here. Let me see what we got. Let's see. Stunning lack of prosperity in my life. The next few years could go either way as the script flips. I tell you what, this is one of the things that I have learned about prosperity. And I'm not saying that this is at the root of your issue, Christine, but a lot of it is mindset. And I'm not the first to tell you about it, right? Like there are people who are very positive, very, very positive, and they're successful and they generate income. And I'm not saying you should be positive, but prosperity is a mindset. And I've noticed this with business people. You know what you don't find with business people? And Christine, this is not a character judgment. But what you don't find with business people is you don't find doom and gloomers. You just won't find them. You know, and you know, this is the hardest thing to living in this world, is when you see the world and you see what's behind the veil and you see the darkness and the creepiness and, you know, how long it's been going on. You can just, you know, go down that path and say, we don't have a shot, right? They're always manipulating things and doing these resets. And, you know, and even when we leave here, we're thrown into some kind of, you know, recycle machine, right? You can have those thoughts and you can come to those realizations. The harder part is, what do you do after that? Right? Or, you could have kind of like, well, the system is rigged, corporations rule the world, they've outsourced everything, and there's no fucking place for me. And you could have those thoughts. And I know people have those thoughts. And guess what? They're not successful. Right? And then you have other people who are really positive with business, but when you start talking about it, they don't want to hear it. And the reason they don't want to hear it is because if they heard it too much and it got inside of them, they would not be productive. They may as well just go out to the garage, hook up the hose to the tailpipe, tape it up, roll down the windows, and start playing Mahler, right? I mean, that's where their head is at, right? So for these people, they're staving off the end of the world because they need to stay positive. They've got mouths to feed, they've got bills to pay, they've got dreams to chase. I think the harder or more challenging piece is when you go through the dark awakening. If you wanted to be prosperous, you have to find a way to have a mindset that supports that. It's that simple. It is that simple. And yet it's not that easy, because it's like, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about, I get it. But that's it. That is the algorithm. Even after so-called awakening, like, look, I made a choice along the way doing these streams. I could go dark every single fucking day of the week. I'm a Scorpio rising, right? It's in my blood. But I decided to go into this space, churn some things up, look at things, but not make it so dark that people just never wanted to come back. And some people are kind of addicted to that, but not so dark that nobody wanted to come back here again. And it wasn't good for me either, because I can become very, very cynical. And then what's to live for? You just have this dark, cynical nature, and everything becomes entropic, right? Everything is just about entropy at that point. So we have to have some personal velocity, I guess, extropy, so that we can have certain things in our lives. And trust me, I have been working on this for a long time. So for me, the yoga has been to temper the dark with the positive. That's been my work. And sometimes I just, want to chuck the positive shit and go, man, this is fucked up. Right? But there's another part inside of me that can't do that, because I have experienced the energy of having a more positive attitude and a more positive mindset. I've experienced the benefits of it. It's better to incorporate that, especially as it relates to what we would call abundance or prosperity. I'm no Joe Dispenza person. It's like, I get it. I understand it. I just have my own kind of practice with things. So, Joe Dispenza, let's have a conversation with Joe Dispenza about Ukraine. Probably not going to have it. He'll probably say it only exists because you pay attention to it. There might be some truth to that, by the way. But I think that's what it's about. And some people have a fantastic mindset. This is why I wish Matt was here, because he could probably talk about that. But unfortunately, looks like you're going to get me today. I'm about maybe 5 minutes away from playing the Leigh guest video. So you will see some other content than me on the show today. So hang in there. And I think it's appropriate, actually, because of this idea of birth and the birth of a new world, or the birth of a new humanity. the birth of a new species. And I'm not even talking, chimeras or hybrids. I'm talking about something fundamentally within us is changed, deeply changed, and from that point forward, forever changed. And my interview with Leigh is about her being a mom and what it's like to just be a mom these days. So I think it's a good point to maybe do the interview here in hour number 2. I'm just waiting for the download a little bit, but I had this. I've talked about this before. It kind of is in the weave of the conversation. I was at this hot spring in Northern California, and I'd spent the day there. It was great. And my car was parked away from the hot springs in the big main house. It was kind of up this dirt road, maybe about, I don't know, 1/8 of a mile up. It was a hot day. And I came out of the hot spring, and I'm walking up the little dusty, dirty road up to my car, and I really got hit with something. And I looked around, and it was almost like uh, a brief glimpse into the future. And here's what I saw and what it felt like. It felt like there were a lot less people in this place. And nature had become a god. Well, and it's not quite pagan, although it has hints of quote unquote paganism. My feeling was that in this thing, this possible future that I was sensing, that everything was alive and everything was aware of everything else being alive. And for me in that moment, when I began to give my attention to the leaves on these bushes and vines that were on one side of the path, I thought to myself, there's a mystery in there that is absolutely beautiful and terrifying. And that's what the future is, right? It is that beauty and the mystery that's absolutely terrifying and exalted. Because when you engage with it, it's out of your control. It's way beyond our ability to comprehend. And when we're in those spaces, we can feel really, really small or lost. But on the other hand, there was so much intelligence and creative potential in there. It was like, wow, this is interesting. We have a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn. And standing before sort of the awesome potential of that was, well, somewhat optimistic, to be honest with you. But it wasn't airy-fairy. Like, it was almost overwhelming in some ways. And I actually think that's where we're headed. When the smoke clears, that's where we're headed. We're headed to that world where we are interactive with everything in a very new way, in a very new relationship. Everything here is segmented and separated. And this is a very different model of the universe. And I would assume that the parasites who have corrupted this plane aren't a part of that world. I don't fully know, but I didn't sense it. It sensed like, to me it was like a world that they couldn't even handle. But if you're humble enough, you could hang in there with it and learn a lot. All right. So it looks like we're almost done here with Leigh's down. Let me do this. Let me set the stage, and I'm going to play you one of Leigh's songs. This is from I guess it was 2021 or 2020 or 2021. And this went viral. This was her Oliver Anthony moment. And some of you might remember this song. It's totally great. Give me one sec. So she did this at Sturgis. Okay. She was asked to perform at Sturgis. On YouTube alone, this video got over 1 million views. That's Oliver Anthony territory. And that's just on YouTube. All right, so let's do this. Let's cue up Fuck Your Feelings, because it'll be a good intro for the conversation.
We went from several generations of hardworking Americans to a bunch of young fucking wussies who live at home with their moms until they're fucking 31 and can't take a punch because they're pussies. Can't make them get a job even though they're all in debt, and they'll lecture you about being politically correct. They're crying and whining on the titties of their mamas. So here's a song for all the prima donnas. Fuck your feelings. No one gives a fuck about your issues, your problems, your shitty fucking luck. This generation's fucked, a bunch of fucking weaklings. So wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. That's right. Fuck your feelings. Screw who you want. It don't affect me, but we don't need 1,000 terms for your sexuality. We're so damned emotional, been crying for a while, but the world can't run on rainbows and unicorn smiles. There's a solution. If you'd shut up and listen, put the effort in a job that you're putting into bitchin'. Suck it up, buttercup. Do this and you'll be fine. Grow a pair and wipe the tears from your vagina. Fuck your feelings. No one gives a fuck about your issues, your problems, your shitty fucking luck. This generation's fucked, a bunch of fucking weaklings. So wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. That's right, wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. The timeout generation that needed the switch got participation trophies and trolled the internet. Social media warriors who sit at home and pout. Now these weenies want a bunch of fucking handouts. Fuck that and fuck your feelings. No one gives a fuck about your issues, your problems, your shitty fucking luck. This generation's fucked, a bunch of fucking weaklings. So wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. That's right. Wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. It's easy. Just wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. Fuck them all.
All right, that was the epic Leigh guest with Fuck Your Feelings. And that is going to be the lead-in for the next 44 minutes. It's a good thing I did this interview the other night. All right, now I just have to find it. There it is right there. Okay. So let's spend the next 44 minutes with my friend Leigh Guest, who went from being on the verge of a internet viral sensation to downshifting, leaving it all behind, becoming a mother. and what that's like for her and why it's the most important thing she's ever done. So let's do this. Here we go.
Wow. It's
okay. So let's do this here. Maybe see if I can, if I do this. Here we go. There it is. All right. Here we go. Me and Leigh guest, and then at the end, I'll play you the last song she did before she had her second child. Enjoy this. This is an amazing story of metamorphosis and transformation on so many levels. And behind it all is two people, her and her husband, and their children's quest to live a sacred life. Here we go. Leigh guest.
Seems like such a long time ago, but just yesterday when Fuck Your Feelings was kind of an interesting viral little cult hit, and it was absolutely appropriate for the time. And I'm here with the singer, the songwriter, and the badass who put that together. Leigh guest, and Leigh has been she's been on the show a few times, and I wanted to have her back on because she's had a major life change, and to some people it might sound really pedestrian and boring, but we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how important, meaningful, and beautiful that life change has been. So Leigh, officially, here's my welcome to the show, the Friday FARcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to see you, Robert.
When I was on a certain forum, Godlike Productions, somebody had posted Fuck Your Feelings on there. And I was able to track views just on that one post. On that one post alone, inside of GLP, there were over 100,000 views. And that was just on GLP alone. Did you ever get a sense from YouTube, which of course does bad number magic on lots of things, but did you ever get a sense as to how popular that was on YouTube at any point in time?
The version that I have up, I think has a few 100,000 views. The original post that someone posted was a biker at Sturgis, and that one got several million views.
Right.
But it was...
Go ahead.
Yeah. It was just, it's a weird thing when you have a video go viral because it happens very quickly. And
it was insanely, it was just like, it just completely, and there's a good reason why, because the song is really funny and it was timely. And it really felt like kind of in a weird way, it was the anthem of the time. And what I find fascinating is that you have somebody like Oliver Anthony, who has a song that has gone like uber viral and is connected with a lot of people. And it's a good song. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of an earworm. And I don't think he's a plant or anything like that. I think what you see is what you get with the guy. But he had all these overtures from all these record companies that wanted to capitalize on his song. And you had a song that was well over 1 million views. Did you ever have anybody from any record company reach out to you after that?
I had a couple different people that wanted to like be the label for the song, so that when people would, they basically like, when you put stuff on iTunes and stuff, people stream it for very little money. But there was couple different people that contacted me about having it through their streaming service exclusively, so that people would have to pay for it and they'd make money. But other than that, not really, because of the nature of the song, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Did not have any big record people contact me, no. I had a few people look at it, and then a lot of people said, we don't know how to market this girl. She swears too much. which is probably true.
Well, your dad certainly thinks so, but I disagree with him. Of course,
Yeah.
I've got an F-bomb mouth myself.
Mine has cleaned up a lot the last couple of years.
Well, you have to watch your P's and Q's now, don't you?
I do, yeah.
You're a mom now. We're going to get into being a mom in a second. This is just a bit of a personal aside. I think I was trying to figure out when I met you. I think it might have been around either 2016 or 2017, and you were in Austin.
I was living in Austin at the time, right? Yeah. So that was, I was 30. That was 6 years ago.
So it's 2017.
2017.
Yeah. And it was one of those moments because I knew Claire. I didn't know her as well. Claire is Leigh's mom. And I didn't know Claire as well as I do now, but I knew her. She was a client. And we were conversing a little bit. And she said, hey, my daughter's going to be playing downtown in Austin tonight. Would you like to go see her, check her out or whatever? And I was like, you know how some of these things go. It's sort of like, oh, okay. Is the daughter going to be any good? Right? Like, I don't want to have to go back and say, oh, well,
an hour of my life.
she was really good. I really liked her. I'm like, no, she was okay. And I remember that night being cold and wet. It was a cold and wet night. And went out to go see you downtown, like on 5th Street. And it was an okay crowd for a cold and wet night. And I'm a really good judge of talent. I've been in and around music for years. This girl has it. She's funny. She's personable. She's got charisma. She sings well. She plays the guitar well. I thought to myself, man, she could be a star. And I don't really say that very often to people or about people. And then you and I connected after the show, and I really liked you as a person too. You were really cool. And I thought to me, you're kind of one of those unrealized, I don't want to use the word star. I think you're a talent that has gone under the radar, and much to, I think, many people's kind of their loss, right? Like, that's how I feel about you and your craft. And as time has gone by, you came to my event a couple of years ago here. You did a live show, and you were amazing. I mean, you were even better than when I saw you the first time. And your, between song banter was almost like stand-up comedy. And I'm just looking at my watch, thinking, when is this girl going to blow up, right? And then Fuck Your Feelings hit, and I think this is it. This is her moment. She's going to go completely viral. Everything that I heard and thought about Leigh is going to happen. Not that it didn't happen. It happened in its own way. But there were things that happened in your life that were going to change that trajectory and that vector of where I thought you were going, and what I thought, and I still think, by the way, not like you've lost it, that you have inherently as an artist, which is very singular and unique. And you decided that you were going to take a different path. You wound up getting married, and now you have 2 kids. And I want to talk a bit about the music part, and then I want to jump into where you are now. Do you feel satisfied with what if you never cut another song again, which I don't think is going to happen, but if you never cut another song again, are you satisfied and happy with what you've done?
Yeah, I'm really happy that I feel like I went out and lived my life. I got out all my crazies. I chased my dream until I decided I was done chasing it, which is good, because I think if I had had kids in my 20s, I would have ended up kind of sad. So I am happy with what, yeah, I'm totally happy with it. It was a really fun ride. You always think you want fame, and then all of a sudden, like for me, it kind of just happened all of a sudden, where I went from being this unknown artist that nobody knew about to just like having this video out there that was all over the internet. And it was kind of one of those moments where I realized, okay, do I want to chase this? Is this what I want to do? Or
Right.
do I want to listen to that, internal clock that's been ticking inside of me and settle down and have a family? So it was that was the game-changing moment.
You were really at a nexus point there, right? You were like, okay, which road do I take? You had your Robert Johnson moment.
Yeah,
And,
I did.
yeah, let's talk about how you got to where you were. First of all, why don't you tell people where you are? I think it's a good visual.
I'm in Montana, in a small town in Montana. Yeah, very, very small town, an awesome place. Has not blown up like the rest of the state quite yet. Yeah, we live on a little farm that we've made, my husband and I and our 2 kids, and a lot of animals.
So very, very simple. Not a lot of technology there, right? There's like no TV, right?
Yeah, we don't have a TV in our house. We don't have Wi-Fi. I like to read a lot of books, and I don't want my kids, zonked out on the TV all day. So we just decided we wouldn't get one.
And how does that feel? Do you feel cut off from the world at all? And maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, I do, which is nice. I mean, I still kind of try to keep a little bit informed about what's going on, but no, it's really, really nice. Taking a break from social media was really good for me. I didn't really realize how much of my time and my energy was focused on trying to look a certain way for the world. Kind of taking a step back from all of that was really refreshing. It's nice to have something that awesome happen in your life, or watch a sunset and not feel like you have to take a picture of it to post for everyone else to see.
Yeah, right. I
So,
totally get that. So, Fuck Your Feelings hits. How do you get from kind of being, the girl on the verge to winding up in Montana? Walk us through like that part of your life.
So I had been down in the Keys right before that song went viral, performing down there. Made a pretty good name for myself. I had a children's book that was doing really well down there. Was playing music almost every night of the week. And then I got offered an opportunity to play at Sturgis. So I drove to South Dakota to perform. And that was where I wrote Fuck Your Feelings, where I performed it and where it went viral. And then ended up coming back to Montana, which I had spent a lot of years here, and reconnected with a long lost love. And yeah, that was the end of that road.
So you kind of hit this peak in Sturgis, right?
Yes.
Right. Everything happens there. You record it. It's popular. It's one of the kind of great kind of patriot moments. Oh, we lost her. She's coming back. There, you're back. And then once you hit that, you're like, I'm going to go to Montana. Did you know you were going to see your long lost love, or you were just going to go to Montana and check it out? And he popped in.
I had to weasel my way back into his life. He was mad at me. No, I wanted to see him. I missed him. He had blocked me, so I had to weasel my way back in. So yeah. But I had I was obviously, I hadn't planned on that song going viral when it did. So it's funny, as a musician, you post all these videos of yourself performing online, hoping that the one will go viral. And then as soon as you're like, I don't care anymore, I'm over music, I've been doing this too long, I want to go back and reconnect and fall in love, then somebody else posts a video of you and that's the one that goes viral. So it really goes to show that the more you try to have something that, it doesn't happen until someone else does it and you don't care anymore. So I kind of, saw Sturgis as an opportunity to get back up north and start my weaseling.
It was your sneaky path.
It was my sneaky path, yeah.
Get into Montana. Okay, so once he unblocked you and said, "Okay, we're gonna plug back into this thing." How it happened pretty quickly, right? It was like you know, open the package, add the contents to water, and stir.
Yeah, we had dated for a while before I left to go down to the Keys, so that was what originally had split us up. But once we got back together, you know when someone's your person. So we got together Labor Day. By Christmas, we were engaged. I was pregnant by February, and we were married in May. So it happened pretty fast.
Right.
And I couldn't be happier. It was the best decision of my life.
That's beautiful. So you have 2 children now. You have Buck, who is rocking the mullet.
He was really rocking the mullet.
I love the mullet. And Buck is a Capricorn, right? Isn't that his sign?
Oh gosh. He's born in November, I think.
Oh, he's a Scorpio. My bad.
He's Scorpio.
He's a Scorpio, like his grandparents. Isn't that interesting? So, do you find him to be very intense? You know, Scorpios. We're talking about your dad before we hit the record button, and how intense and obsessed he can get with things. Have you noticed that with him already? Like, is he just like get into something and throw everything into it?
He's very intense when he plays. Like, he'll sit there and look at a toy and like take it apart and just. I've never seen a kid that can sit there and like stare at something like a golf ball for 10 minutes, just looking at every little nook and cranny in it.
He's very pivot in the ball and everything.
Yeah.
Right. That's very Scorpionic. That's totally Scorpionic. What else have you noticed about him? Because he's kind of in this magical phase now. What is he? Almost 3? He'll be 3 in November. Is that right?
No, 2.
2. Oh my God.
Yeah, he's only almost 2. I just didn't waste any time. I'm getting up there in age, Robert, so I just had to have like back-to-back babies.
That's right. You were on the case.
I was on the case, yeah.
So has he entered into kind of that magical child phase? Like, are you starting to see some of that?
Yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit of who he is. He's a hard worker. He always wants to help me with whatever I'm doing, and he's so smart. He goes and collects the eggs in our chicken coop every day. He helps me pick vegetables out of the garden. He's a smart kid.
He pitches in. I like it. I like
he
that.
Does. His dad's teaching him how to drive the tractor and the excavator. Yeah, he's a good kid.
That is awesome.
He already works harder than most of the people that I was talking about in my song.
It's funny.
So mission accomplished.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Your feelings counted. And then you just had another baby, Charlie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how old is she now? She's. I saw a picture. Clara showed me a picture of her, and she's beautiful. Oh my God, this. Like, I'm generally not into babies, but there's like, whoa, this is a beautiful baby.
Yeah, babies are funny looking. She's cute though.
She's not funny though. She's like, this is a beautiful looking baby. When is her birthday?
She is April. Middle of April.
So she's an Aries.
Oh, she's my opposite.
Yeah, so she's an Aries. You got an Aries and a Scorpio, both Mars rulers in their own right. Aries girls are pistols, man. You got a pistol in your hands with Charlie.
Yeah, she's intense too. She already has these really like flirty faces that she makes, and I'm like, whoa, look out, world. And
she's your opposite sign, so watch out. Mm-hmm. Right? Aries, Libra, you got a little rival on your hands there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, look out. Let's talk about, I know this may sound corny to some people, but let's talk about what it is for you now to be a mother, and not just be a mother, but a mother during a time like you've really settled into a very traditional role. You know, you're there, you're on the homestead, you've got the babies, they're with you, your husband goes out and works. Like, this is the antithesis in some ways of this postmodern world we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
from a personal perspective, what does that feel like for you?
You know, it's really funny because I look back now and I used to be such an uber feminist and never thought that I wanted this life. I even have a song called Misbehave where I was like putting down everything that I am now. Just goes to show how much you change.
Right.
I love being a stay-at-home mom. I always thought that I needed to pursue my career and that was what was going to make me happy, but I get more joy and more fulfillment. There's more meaning to my life now, I think, than there was when I was performing. Getting to be home and watch my kids grow, watching their little personalities come out. It's a wonderful, I feel like being a parent completes you. And it makes me sad that I was almost fooled by the world that we live in to think that would make me a weak woman rather than a badass woman.
Right. What was we know that Sturgis was this nexus point for you, but can you point out like somewhere on your journey where your values began to shift and change? Can you remember like when that might have happened?
You know, I think it was a lot of the COVID stuff. I think COVID, if nothing else, made a lot of people realize what was important in their life. And that was when all of a sudden I knew that I wanted to have kids. I wanted to have a family. I wanted something more than being at bars performing every night. I think that sometimes when you're a performer, you're like constantly seeking for everyone in the world's approval and for more and more people to like you and more people to notice you. But there is somewhat of an emptiness about that sometimes whereas now I have one person who loves me very much, who I love to spend my time with, and it's just a more fulfilling relationship.
Right. Yeah. I think that was one of the gifts that COVID did bring, is that it crystallized certain things for people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like there was an on switch and an off switch, I think, with COVID.
Right.
And if you were paying attention, like you got the on switch.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this is what I'm going to be activated by, turned on by. I have my own version of that. But I think that was, in as much as it did a lot of damage to people's lives, I think that your story it's singular and unique to you, but it's probably a bit more common in some ways than we might understand.
Yeah. I think too, COVID, like being away from people and not being able to interact with people, not being able to go out and have a life, it makes people realize, wow, I want meaning. I want personal relationships. More than just scrolling on Facebook. That's not a real, real relationship.
This, I'm sharing a little personal information, and I think I haven't asked you about it. I think it's okay. But during that time, you and I either talked or we did a session or something. I don't know if it was official or anything. And you were like trying to figure out what you wanted to do. Like, do I, go home to Sacramento to be with my family, or do I stay here in Florida? And so we talked about it. And now that I look back on that conversation we had, and kind of bringing up this intense feeling of wanting to be with your family during that time, like now that I see that, it's like, okay, did that permeate and carry over into like the decisions and the life choices that you were going to make? Did that seep in there?
Oh, it probably did. Yeah.
Because you were very intense around that. You had this like, I'm either going to stay here or I'm going to go back to be with my family. And you were kind of torn a little bit, but it wasn't casual. It wasn't like, well, I'm thinking about going back there. I mean, you were like, this is a moment. Like, I got to make a choice in this moment.
Right.
And I just remember the intensity of the feeling around your family. And then out of that, you create your own family.
I did, yeah. Yeah, COVID, I think, was the biggest blessing for some people, the biggest curse for others. But you're right about how it was like the on-off switch.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. What would you tell, before I ask you this question, did you see, you probably skipped this because you're not dialed into social media that much. There was a woman who posted a video on TikTok that Matt Walsh picked up on. And she got up and in the video, she says, oh, you know what? I got up this morning and it was 8:30 and I didn't have to do anything. And last night I was at Beyonce and I drank too much and I danced my ass off. And if I had had kids, I would have had to hire a babysitter and pay them, but I didn't. And then I didn't have to get up and answer to anybody. And, I was a little hungover. So I went through my phone and I scrolled through some messages. And then, I saw egg shashuska or egg shuksa or whatever the fuck it is. And I thought to myself, I'm going to maybe learn how to make that dish today. Did you see this at all? Did you see this video?
No, but it sounds sad.
It does sound sad.
I would have
right?
loved to hear Matt Walsh rip into her.
They got into it, right? They were going back and forth, and he does this like the idiot of the week or something like that, right? Or whatever the title he gives them. And then she was like not having any of it. She was going to come back at him. So they were going at it for a little while. And to me, it was like the epitome of this kind of postmodern woman. I think she was maybe in her mid-30s. And I thought that the egg thing was really interesting. Like, why was she attracted to this egg dish? I mean, I know she's kind of hungover and everything. But when you look at this dish, I think it's like this Turkish egg dish. It's, these eggs in this sort of tomato pepper broth. And it just feels really like amniotic, It's like,
Yeah, that sounds gross.
why are you focusing on that? What is your body trying to tell you, right?
Oh, gosh.
But that, again, that's the antithesis of you and the path that you've chosen. So let's not really use her as an example, but let's use her as an example. What would you tell a woman like that based on like your lifestyle, your life choice, and what you're experiencing and what they may be missing out on by fulfilling their whatever momentary needs are?
I think that kind of behavior is really cute when you're in your 20s. You should. I feel like when you live your life like that, you're going to wake up at 60 years old wishing that you had a grandchild, wishing you had somebody who's going to take care of you when you're older, who's going to I feel like there's just an emptiness. You'd have nothing when you get older. And I understand that, you can make family, and not everybody has the ability to have children, but man, that's what got me is I'm like, are you going to want to be that old maid someday that's all alone? Going out to bars isn't going to be as fun, finding dates on Tinder or whatever people are using nowadays. Eventually you kind of have to grow up from that life and have some priorities. But it's sad because I think our society sort of makes that seem like it's the glamorous lifestyle. But
Right.
oof, I don't miss that life at all. I feel sorry for this girl.
Yeah. I think that's probably the operative. I mean, you could feel other things, but from your vantage point and your experience, I think that's the operative word and response, because it's sad.
It is sad, and I don't miss my old life at all. I thought that I would. I don't miss it at all. My old life seems so exhausting. Waking up hungover, and it just, dating, so exhausting.
Right. Now you get to focus on your priorities.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the state of the world and having kids. A lot of people like, oh, I'd never have a kid. I wouldn't want to bring a kid into this world. Not for me, right? You have two, and I know that you're eyes wide open with what's going on in the world. What's it like for you to raise these two little beings in this very weird place we're all kind of inhabiting together now?
Yeah, that was something my husband and I talked about for a while is, do we want to have kids? Do we want to bring them into this world? I have found the Lord in the last few years, and I honestly believe that God will work through children, and that it's important to raise good children with strong values in the world that we live in, because if we don't have them, then what do we have?
Right.
So I sort of feel like saying, oh, we live in a crappy world, I shouldn't have kids. I feel like that's like the coward's way out.
Right.
And to have faith that you can do a good job as a parent, you can teach them scruples, you can teach them values, and you can raise a little warrior fighting the good fight.
Right. To me, it feels like that's more of the true path, of the right path, because if we want to have a world that and projects those values and the spiritual, the religious harmonic, right? Need bodies for that.
Right.
You need bodies for that kind of world, and you need people that can embody those things. That's really the answer. The answer is to not, for me, is to not have children.
Right.
Because now you're playing into this whole other, dystopic vision of the world where people just don't have kids, and they've got these artificial egg sacs, and it's like, pick or choose, right? Are we going to remain organic, or are we going to go down the path of the Matrix? And so
Right.
you have firmly made that choice.
Well, and if you look at too, just like everything that they're doing with just indoctrinating the children in the school system, one of the things I love so much about where I live is that almost all the mothers here homeschool. We're all raising our kids to think for themselves, and we need to, I don't know, it's like it's my way of fighting the system, is maybe I can have 2 children in the world that can think for themselves, that can see through all that nonsense, that don't have their blinders on.
Right. Yeah. Wow. What an absolutely enlightening approach to raise 2 conscious and disciplined and loving and awake kids. Like, that is really, that to me, that's a life work.
Well, and also like the loving part. We live in a world where there's not a lot of love. There's a lot of evil. There's a lot of sadness. We need children to be a light for those other children. There's going to be a lot of sad kids that need to see someone who's happy. They need to see that light. So it's important.
That's a really good point. That's a really, really good point. What about music? I mean, obviously you're musical. Is Buck showing any kind of musical traits, and would you encourage him to be musical?
Yeah, we do. We do like percussion time with little shakers and stuff, because that's about where he's at developmentally. When I do pick up my guitar, he runs over. I let him play with the ukulele sometimes, so I'll still try to strum it. Charlie is really responsive to music. She really likes, I put on like Loretta Lynn or Patsy Cline on Pandora and sing to her. She's really receptive to it.
He's into it, huh?
Yeah. And Buck likes it. He likes to sit at the piano too. So I've been trying to relearn that so that I can teach him, which is a good wintertime project, but having projects is really hard when you've got, hard in the summertime.
Right.
When you've got gardens and chickens and all that stuff. But
because you got work to do.
Yeah.
What, you brought up the word hard. What's been the hardest part for you with making this transition? If it's even been hard at all, but if there's been a hard part, what's been the hardest part?
Gosh, it was easy for me. The hardest part for me was probably just feeling a disconnect with some of my old friends, different life. I sort of, the few, a lot of the ones that would reach out to me afterwards, they kind of still wanted that old Leigh. and there was a bit of a disconnect. But the positive of that is finding out which friends are really deep, meaningful friends that I have kept in touch with, and that we've sort of taken our friendship to a different level. But it is hard. I used to be the life of the party, and now, I'm usually in bed by 10 o'clock reading a book. So
has your life change, has it influenced any of your friends? Have they said, God, I want that?
I wonder. Yeah, I feel like my friend circle has gotten really, really small. I changed my phone number, and I feel so sorry for the poor guy in Texas. Actually, I had a 512. I had an Austin number, and I feel so sorry for Steve is his name, who inherited my old phone number and is probably getting all sorts of ridiculous text messages and late night phone calls. But yeah, my friend circle ended up getting a lot smaller. That, when you're a mom, you end up wanting mom friends.
Right.
Which is really boring, I'm sure, to the lady in Matt Walsh's video. But yeah, I lost my train of thought.
So you don't, your friends are kind of still there, but the question was, have any of your friends said, I'm envious, I want your life? Have they made changes to have a life that looks a bit more like yours? That was really the root of the question.
Yeah, I do have one really close friend who's been wanting to get pregnant for a long time. And so she, I think, has been really loving watching me grow with my little family. And I keep hoping that she will get that little baby that she wants. But yeah, I'm not sure other than that if I have or not.
Right. Well, maybe this video will. Maybe this
Maybe.
video will influence. Maybe this video will go viral.
Well, I haven't posted a lot of stuff about being a mom. I think there's a lot of people who still don't really know about it. My husband and I decided we didn't want pictures of our kids on the internet.
Right.
So it might have had something to do with it too.
Yeah.
But I did post a song that made it very obvious that I was pregnant. So.
Right. We're going to play that song at the end of our interview as a bridge to the second part of the show. And that's Birthing Person, right? That's the song?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Kind of. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that this is just a really bad phase that we're going through? And
I hope so.
And we're going to shake this thing off, and the adults are going to come back into the room again. Like,
Ashton Kutcher is going to come and tell us we got punked.
He's a Freemason. He probably.
I hope so. Yeah. I don't know. I hate to. I feel like we're so far down this road, and the indoctrination of the children living in this world is so deep that I don't know if we can go back at this point. I don't know. I hope so. I hope that we do. The world just keeps getting more and more ridiculous. Yeah, lies have become the truth. Truth has become lies.
Right.
I don't even know what to. I just read 1984 not long ago, and it's crazy the similarities between the world we live in that book.
Right. Well, some people say, "Wow, he was really prophetic. He saw what was coming." No, he worked for those people.
Oh, did you?
Oh, he knew. He knew where it was going.
It's crazy if you watch the old videos of Soviets talking about how America is going to crumble. Everything is happening.
Yeah. Oh, it may be a little behind schedule, but it is. We're watching the slow motion collapse of the twin towers of this country, right
Yeah.
before our very eyes, and it's frightening to really go down that path, and just how far and deep it could really, really go, and turning this place into almost like a Mad Max scenario, and
Yeah, it's
that's a
crazy
possibility.
how scary it is to say things that are truthful.
Right.
People are bullied into not feeling like they can say a man is a man, a woman is a woman, the most basic biological truths. The world that we live in is crazy.
Well, even Trump got tripped up with that. You probably didn't see it, but he did this interview with Megyn Kelly. I think it was last week, and she asked him that question about a man is a man and a woman is a woman. And Trump did something I've never seen him do. He used the word and he held on to it for a very long time. It almost sounded like ohm. That's how long he held on to it. And I could tell he had like a picture of Caitlyn Jenner right in the forebrain as he's trying to figure out how he's going to answer this question, because they're buddies. But even somebody like Trump, who has been the vox populi in a lot of ways, he could not reflexively answer that question.
That is surprising. I did not see that video. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah. See, I'm doing all this. I'm doing all the media watching for you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You'll have to clue me in on what's going on. My mom usually does.
Yeah. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Is there any stories or anecdotes or moments as you're moving through your days as a mother where you had an epiphany or something that really struck you and said, this is the best place to be in the universe right now? Have you had anything like that happen to you?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot with that one, Robert. Yeah. Ooh. You know what? If I think of something from now till the end of the interview, I've had a lot of mom moments, but you've caught me at the end of the day after having a small child suck the nutrients out of my body all day.
It could just be really simple, like all four of you like hanging out together, right? Like it could just be that simple. Like this is the perfect place to be. I don't want to be anywhere else, right? It doesn't have to be some, photonic revelation or anything like that.
I think when you're looking at a small child and you see you and you see your husband in them and they have those little aha moments where all of a sudden something clicks. Buck learns how to put his shoes on for the first time. I think those are the magical moments for me. Him figuring out how to do things on his own. Looking over, and he holds Charlie's hand sometimes when she starts crying. He'll go over there and hold her hand. Or yesterday, she spit up on the floor. She was laying on a little mat, and he ran into the kitchen, grabbed the bath towel, and then I see him run back over to the living room, and I peek my head around to see what he's doing, and he's wiping spit up off of her face and off of the mat so that she doesn't have barf on her.
How does that not bring a tear to your eye?
It really does bring a tear to my eye.
Yeah.
Or when you see a little toddler that actually is obeying, when you just struggle with obedience all day long because he's a toddler, but when you finally see those moments where he does the right thing, you're like, yes.
Right. Like I'm making a difference. Yeah.
Proud mom moment.
Proud mom moment. All right. I'm not going to keep you much longer. It's at the end of your day, and you have had a very intense, but I'm sure very fruitful mom day. Any final thoughts here? Anything you want to share with anybody else?
Yeah, so I always said, I'm going to do this later in my life. I'm going to do this later in my life. And, you may not get that later in your life. So do the things you want to do today. Do the things you want to do tomorrow. And don't wait for it.
Those are wise words to live by. And my final question to you is, can we expect any more music in the future?
Possibly. I don't have songs. I used to just have songs that pretty much wrote themselves. They just flop out of me. And I don't have that as much anymore, but I still do catch little lyrics here and there. That Birthing Person song kind of wrote itself. So I'm sure that there will be songs, just probably not as many as there used to be.
Right. You've got other priorities now. But
Maybe
you
we'll
still
get
have,
a cool one of Buck singing someday with his mullet.
that would be awesome. And
Yeah.
you still have your website, your music, right? That's all still up there. And so
Yeah, I
people
still have
can-
a ton of music on iTunes and Spotify, all that stuff. My dad just told me I'm on Pandora. Yeah, I still have my website. There's not much to it anymore since I'm not performing, but I still have CDs for sale and stuff, and my books
Okay.
on Amazon.
Well, we'll put some links up here, and people could certainly listen. If you want to support a mom and her family, buy some CDs. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank-
Leigh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for
Yeah,
taking
you
time.
too, Robert.
I really,
Yeah.
really, really appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right, that was Leigh Guest, and I wasn't going to run that until next week. I was going to have it as part one of a 2-hour show. I'll be interviewing Dr. Shiva next week, which will be really interesting. I got to get my A game together with Dr. Shiva, and my intention for that interview. Well, first of all, I'll tell you what my intention wasn't. My intention was not to shame women who have chosen not to have kids or couldn't have kids. Okay, that was not my intention. All right, so but my intention with that was to show somebody who was living a life, right, that was headed down one path, and just as they got to that point where it looked like everything was going to come to fruition, they veered off that path and decided to have a very different life. And I think perhaps there is some, there was some intention to show a very positive version of parenting and being a mother. But that's the other part of this, because Leigh is really grounded. And I think she's doing an amazing job with her life and her kids. And, it's not the sexiest subject or topic that I could probably cover, but I also feel like it's timeless and deeply organic to the point where they don't even have any Wi-Fi, right? She did all that on her phone. It's just, the signal coming from the phone tower, or wherever it is, not far from her little home there, right? So that was part of it. It was what happens when a person makes a very different kind of choice and a positive image of being a mother and parenting. And I only brought that other woman up as kind of a contrast. And of course, everybody's free to do what they want. And for some people, having kids is fairly complex. But for Leigh and her husband, it's become their life and part of their life, not the entirety of it, but part of the fabric of the web that they're weaving. And I'm glad that somebody is taking time to do that and to do it in what I'd call an organic way. So I did not know I was going to play this interview today. So I have to redo a bunch of stuff with the picture and the title, and I'll put some links up. If you're interested in listening to her music or even purchasing some of her music, it's available on all these different places, and her website if you're into CDs, or downloads if you're into iTunes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's it. Thanks for being here. Any other comments here before we go? Let's see. This is a good comment before we go. It's sometimes hard to find a man who wants and is ready for a family. My ex left me after 11 years. I thought he's commit, but he was an avoidant. I'm glad Leigh found a good man, fellow artist here. That's the other side of the equation, isn't it? Because according to her, she'd left him. She had left him, and she had to find a way to rekindle the fires of their hearts. and to build trust back again. So perhaps paradise alpine. Perhaps it's not over. Who knows? Maybe your ex will have a moment of clarity. Or maybe somebody else will. Or maybe they won't. You'll find out. Okay. Thanks for being here. Please join us on Sunday night, where I guess he was lurking a little bit over here in chat. Professor Longo, Old World Florida, will be on this channel on Sunday night, and it'll be good. It'll be just right in the wheelhouse of the equinox. So we'll be talking Libra, Eden, and a bunch of other stuff. Okay, take good care. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to set what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you are you. Bye for now.